It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Sheri Fernandez. Hi, Sheri. How are you?
Hi, Douglas. I'm great. How are you doing?
Oh, doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
You've got a book out called Life Mastery, Personal Progression Towards an Infinite Potential. Well, that sounds very daunting. Tell us a little bit about your backstory first, and then we'll get to the book. I just want to kind of hear about what happened to you and what you've been doing, and then where you got to the point in your life to write the book.
Well, I started weirdly enough I think as a child. I was my parents were divorced when I was little, and this is in early 1960s. So my mother wasn't very equipped to have 4 little girls. I was the oldest of 4, and I was only 7, and so I kind of was just a little ragamuffin, wandering around town. But somewhere in my wandering, I don't know if I always would have been a big thinker or a thinker that, person that did a lot of thinking, but I thought a lot as I wandered around that little town. And somewhere in my thinking, I determined, I was just sure that I was destined for great things. I just knew that somehow, that I didn't even know what great things were, but somehow I was somebody special and I was going to do great things. And that feeling stayed with me, actually. Faded a little bit during my late teens and early 20s when I was just partying and hitchhiking and almost destroying myself. But it came back to me fully when I was a young woman. I was married to 2 little girls, and my husband and I had both partied away our preparatory years, so we were pretty strapped for money. It was pretty tight, and we were pretty poverty-stricken. That's the bottom line. But that feeling that I was really destined for great things, like I really just wanted things, like not like things, but like I wanted to. I did want some things. I didn't want to have a cap on my finances forever. And I wanted to be able to have babies and have a really sexy body. And I wanted to get the education that I missed. And I wanted to live fully. I wanted a rich spiritual life. I just wanted everything that was worth having out in the world. And so I set about, in my mid-20s, figuring out how you go from being a poor mother of 2, being able to feed your family, to having everything. And I started reading and applying the things that I learned and starting certain practices. I did that I'm 66 now. So I did that and found success in all those areas, even more than I imagined. I guess I was destined for great things. And I began speaking, invited to speak on some of the things that I'd accomplished. And eventually I started doing more teaching and started coaching. And then in last year, in 2020, I've been asked a lot of times if I would write a book, and I was like, no, I'm not a speaker, not a teacher. But then in 2020, all of a sudden it seemed like the right thing to do, and I thought I might as well put what I know in writing, and that's what I did in 2020, and Life Mastery, Personal Progression Towards an Infinite Potential was born.
Okay. I'm curious now, at the point where you said that, money was strapped and you had children to take care of, you started reading. What was the first thing you did on your road to success? What was the first thing you did?
Well, the first thing I actually read at that point, I'd read something as a teenager, but the first thing I really read was See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. The first thing I did, and applied the very first tool that I used, which I still teach to this day, only it's much more refined, but I made what I now call a little tracking sheet. It was just a little 3x5 card chart. I wanted to develop some daily habits. I don't know how I knew that this was going to lead me to success, but somehow I had the feeling if I could get a grip on I was very undisciplined all my life until up to about that point I started to develop. Now people who know me think of me as very disciplined, but at that point I had been very undisciplined. So I wanted to develop 3 habits. And I made this little chart. I listed my 3 habits down one column on the left and the days of the month across the top. And I just checked off the things as I did them, and I began developing habits that way. So the very first thing I did was practice 3 habits I wanted every day and track them. And the tracking them is the critical thing. And I still have those habits to this day, 40 years later. more than 40 years. I still do those three things, plus a whole bunch more. I still track new habits and old. Can
you tell us what the habits were, or give us one?
Yes, I'll tell you. I don't want to make me sound like some kind of huge religious person. I was a very wild young person, and very without any kind of. I was really out there, but I did believe that there was a God in heaven, and I wanted access to that power. I felt like if there's any power in the world that could help me have really good days, so I could have the life I wanted to access that. So the first one was that I would pray in the morning. Another one was that I would keep a journal every day, and the other one was daily reading at that point. Then later I added exercise. Shortly after that, I added a fourth one, which was exercise. But it was reading, praying, and journal writing was my first three. And then I added exercise quite quickly after that.
I can see how prayer and reading would be a good discipline to have. But what was the significance of journal writing, or how did that help you?
I still do it. I do it every day. I don't know if it really does help me for sure, but by darn, I worked hard for that to happen. I'm keeping it, but I think it does help me. It does help me sit down and focus what's going on in my life and what I'm thinking. So I have to put it on paper. So I think I don't have a really great memory, and I've sort of lived pretty much. I just live kind of in the moment. I think it makes me calm down. And then my brain's all over. You can tell my brain's all over the place. So I think the journal writing helps me calm down and just focus a little bit on what's going on in my life. My journal is, I'm no doubt, boring, but I still do it. But somebody had given a talk around that time, a really persuasive talk about journal writing, and I just thought, well, I'll do that. So that was the main reason at that time. I just thought, sounds like a good idea. And if I was to do that over again at this point, that might not be something I would choose, but. And it's not my journals. I'm not like a journaler, like a lot of people are like writers and they're journalers. I write 2 or 3 sentences about what's going on in my life or my head, and that's about it for the journal writing. But I've done it all these years, 40 plus years I've been writing in a journal every day.
Well, it's interesting because it seems like it's kind of a lost art. I mean, if you go back 100, 200 years, a lot of people were writing in journals. And that was just sort of what people did. I mean, right up to Queen Victoria had a diary that she kept for decades. And, I think now maybe social media has kind of replaced that in a lot of people's lives because they post daily and it's all there. You can go back every day and see what you posted, see what pictures you posted. And it's kind of it's an online kind of journal for people.
I guess there's two, and I said that was kind of sad, but really, on the other hand, it's something. And I will tell you, my journals have been valuable when I need to go back and remember a date that we did a certain thing, or I want to share. I have 6 children. I ended up with 6 children, and eventually, not at that point, but eventually we had 4 more, and so I want to go back sometimes and share something about when they were little, or look for some little thing for them that I want to tell them about. I can go back and look at those journals. So those are really valuable. But yeah, the Facebook thing, that's something. And just before you called, my daughter asked me for some pictures of my dad, and I said, I'll send them to you after I talk to Douglas Coleman. But in the meantime, if you want to go on Facebook, they're in my Facebook.
Yeah, they're all there.
So yeah, it's all right there. It really is.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Journal writing.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just looking at your bio here. It says, so you and your husband, Ken, lived on the edge of destitution until they began to explore personal development through books, tapes, live events. He started a construction supply company.
Construction supply. Right. We had set a goal somewhere in that time that I started my tracking sheet that we would be worth $1 million when he hit 40. That our value would be, and I don't know how we thought we were going to do that at the time, because we were working. He was working 2 jobs, and I was taking kids in for daycare, and still not making it. But for some reason, we were audacious enough to think we could do it. No one told us we couldn't at that point, so I guess we thought we could, and we did. And the main way we did that was that construction supply business. We started that in the early 80s, and mid-80s. It was about mid-80s, and a few years later, it was doing well enough that we started making finally some good enough money to support ourselves. And a few years after that, we were worth $1 million.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Of course, that was a long time ago. We have a lot more than that now. Yeah, we kept applying that principle, and it worked pretty good.
Well, it's interesting about starting a company on your own because it is a very daunting task. And I think what keeps people from doing it is just getting it started, because you've got to figure out where you're going to get the money to start it up if you're lucky enough that a bank will actually loan you money for it. Construction supply, I suppose, would be an easier company to get a bank loan for. I could be wrong. But
well, what happened for us, we had no assets, so there was no loan.
Oh,
what we
okay.
did, and now this company, when we started, was my brother-in-law loaned us $30,000 and a truck, and my husband started in an old warehouse down in a not very good part of town. So that's where it started. Now we have 6 locations and a fleet of trucks and gazillion employees and all that kind of stuff. But but you know what you said was really wise there. You said, I guess you have to get started. And that's true of everything we want to accomplish, right? Everything feels kind of daunting. Getting in shape feels daunting, but you just start. And that's what we did. We just started with what we had and grew it. And that's how you do everything. You start with where you're at, whether it's working out or getting an education or any habit you want to develop. You start where you're at and you just take steps forward until you get where you want to go.
I think that's true. And I think what holds a lot of people back is that fear. I really believe that because I see people in this business. I get to talk to everybody, and people with so much potential and so much talent, but they keep it all in their desk drawer and they don't do anything with it. You know, I've interviewed some musicians who have sent me demo tapes that just blew me away. And I'm a musician as well, so I know what they're doing. But just some really original takes on composition and things. I don't want to get too technical, and I said, well, this is wonderful. And then I would ask them, well, where's your website? Can I help promote your music? Where's your music online? Nothing. No internet presence at all. And I thought, that's not going to get you anywhere. You've really got to do it. And it's just amazing to me. And he just, I don't want to go on internet, too much work, blah, 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 blah. And it really is that. It's really about people just having that fear of getting started. Once you get started, it seems not that you're not going to have bad days and challenges and walls to get over, but there is a perpetual motion. Okay, you do it the first day, then you do it the second day, then you do it the next day. And it gets a little bit easier, if not even boring, because it gets to be routine. But once you get into the routine of it, things start to move. At least I've found that to be true with my company, with DJC Music and Productions. It just, and now 7 years later, we've got 2 shows and I've got music produced. But it was getting it started that took me out of my rut. I was in a 20-year rut in my life. I'm glad you figured it out sooner.
It took quite a while. It was a process. I didn't just one day say, I get it now. It was a process. You said 2 things I thought were so smart. One is you said, first of all, what you said about people, everybody's like those talented people. Everybody has potential that is hardly even tapped, every single person. And none of us will actually ever develop our potential completely, but so much of it is just like you said, it's just like in the drawer, or it's been said people die with their dreams in them. And I compare our potential to the redwood coniferous cones. They're just tiny little cones. They're like about the seed of a redwood. They're like about an inch tall, but redwoods are, my husband tells me that redwoods can be 3 times the tallest building in my state.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that. I can't even imagine that. The tallest building I know is just down the block from me, and it's 17 stories. So these trees can get that big, and people are like that. But there's so many cones underneath redwoods that just will rot in the ground and never turn into redwoods, right?
It's true.
So I think people are a lot like that. The other thing you said that was so smart is you said you just started, and then day after day after day. It's all about daily habits. People are often afraid more of their success, I think, than the failure or just getting started.
Yeah,
but
that's
often,
a good point.
I think we think that we need to jump ahead to this thing. like I did this big thing. You said they're afraid to get started. It looks daunting. It looks huge. And just take it one step at a time. What's the first step? And let me just get in the habit of every day working on the first step and then the second step. And so progress doesn't happen in great big leaps. It just, not for anybody. We hear about big success stories and people's lucky break and different things like that. Or they started this business in my garage and it turned into a multi-bazillion-dollar company. It really is never, if you look at the backstory, it's never really like that. It's just little steps taken every day, consistently, developing the habit of, maybe the habit is just working on your music business. Whatever the habit is that you're going to do, is working on every day and keeping your dream in your mind so that you don't get bored with the daily stuff. And that's success. Whatever it is you want in life is available, and that's always the same system.
Yeah, and it's just
little steps.
Right. It's little steps, it's persistence, and then, gradually broadening your scope and expanding a little bit more. You look at something like McDonald's. I mean, they started out with cheeseburgers, French fries, and milkshakes. And now they're 50 years later, the rest is history. Now they have mixed salads. Who would have thought in 1958 that they would have had mixed salads, right? But they do.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, I asked you about our company, and I told you my husband started with this truck and a $30,000 loan. We now make more money than he started with every day.
Yeah,
than he started business with. We make more money in that company every single day than what he spent. I'm not saying we make it. I think we do. I know we bring in way more than that every day than what he spent on that. No, that's true. We make more money every day. I'm thinking it through now. We make more money every day than what he got for that original loan. Isn't that crazy? And it was a slow process. We didn't just jump into success. He went from that to hiring a guy, hiring two guys, to getting another truck, to getting a couple more trucks, then getting another location and hiring a couple other guys, and then hiring somebody else. And then we almost lost it all in the recession, and he started all over again and did it again, right?
Yeah. And
went through the same process again. So, it's just the baby steps. You just start somewhere.
Yeah, I've got one full-time. I started this, alone, and now I have one full-time person and two part-time people, sort of contract people when I need them. And we're looking for one more person at this point. And now that COVID is finally going away, we're thinking about setting up a real studio where we can do live, like a live talk show. Because everything I've done has been virtual up to this point, be it this type of interview over the phone or Skype for the video show. And I would love to do a real talk show. That's sort of my dream, is to set up a bigger studio than what I've got now and have a little set like a smaller version of Ellen DeGeneres show, something like that.
Oh, well, remember me, Douglas, and I'll come down. You're in Nevada?
I'm in Las Vegas, yeah.
Is that where you're at? In Las Vegas? So I'll just go to Las Vegas and be on your show. I've done... since my book came out, it hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list in July, in the middle of July. And since that time, I have done, this is like my 53rd, I think, interview.
Oh.
They've all been at home, on most of them on Zoom.
Yeah.
And then a few phone calls like this one. Some recorded, some live. But I thought it would really be fun to go somewhere and do one of these. Wouldn't that be fun to see your host in person, to get to know their people that work for them and see them in their own environment? I thought that would be really fun. This is very convenient, but it would be so fun to actually go somewhere. And
well, it's a real event to actually go on a show, and it's a whole process. Yeah. I mean, you get there and they put you in the green room and they bring you coffee and you sit there and wait, and then, okay, you're on. And then if it's a really big production, they'll have a makeup person. And so you go into the makeup room and sit in the mirror and they fluff you up. And you stand in the wings and then you're cued to come on. And it's a great day. It's like going to Disneyland.
And also, at this point, I do everything for the experience of it, right? I mean, I'm trying to make a difference in the world. Obviously, I would have written a book and got that much trouble. But still, for me, it's all an experience, too. Trying to make a difference in the world and get my message and all that. But also, life is just about experiences. So learning new things. So doing these interviews has been fun. I got better as I went. And I think that I'm getting really good feedback, and people are asking me back a second time and even a third time. So I guess I'm doing okay. But it's been fun. I've learned a lot, and now I guess I'm ready to learn some new things. But it's been fun, and everything's just an experience. It makes makes life a little richer and makes us a little better for every experience we have, a new thing we learn. So that'd be another new thing. I'm used to speaking on stages, that kind of thing. I've done a lot, but at a live interview in person, I can't recall ever having done anything like that before.
Well, I suppose, unfortunately, because of COVID and then because of the sudden rocketing effect of Zoom and virtual and people working at home, the live in-studio type shows, I think, are going to go. I mean, not disappear altogether.
Yeah, I think so.
But I think they're going to be on the decline because it's just so much easier to do virtual. And the technology is so good now that you could have a huge studio set up. Like even the news outlets, Fox and NBC and all of them, they're all doing virtual. They're doing fewer and fewer live talk show, editorial shows, things. They have their people in their studio, but then they've got lots of big screen TVs all the way around and just have all kinds of people on them. So I think it's going to go more towards that direction, which is fine. But I think there's...
It already has, I think.
It already has,
now, most of them.
But I think there's opportunity to still do
and then,
a live local show.
And then the pendulum will swing the other way. Somebody will want to do something unique and do it in live, and that will be unique and new, and then everybody will want to do that. But I've had a lot of hosts tell me that already, that they used to do them, they used to do them in person since COVID. Now they do it on Zoom, and that's going to be the way they're going to do it from now on. I've heard several people say that this is going to be their new normal.
Well, if you,
which is fine. Like you said, you can do a lot of things. You can get guests you might not ordinarily be able to get. And the technology, I mean, all you really need is a laptop, and you can do an interview worthy of YouTube or whatever your program is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you said you can get people from everywhere. I've had people from New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, India, Japan, one from Thailand. I mean, I'm just all over the world with people on the show. And you could never do that with a live show. Unless you had a private jet. You'd have to be like in Hollywood or something, I guess, or New York. To fly people
in order
in
to get people like that.
Yeah, it's not really.
So it's good. There's plenty of advantages to it. I couldn't have done 50. I mean, I've been doing as many as 3 interviews in a day on some days. Well, how could you ever possibly do that if they were live, right? And I'm squishing in my clients or other activities in between. Do an interview, go work out, come back, do another interview. You can't do that if they're live.
That's
true.
It's
good.
It's also a lot cheaper.
A chance to give their message.
Yeah. To do
the only thing
virtual.
I wonder about is there's so many voices out there. If it's going to get more and more difficult to get your show, your message, your program. I'm thinking more for you and your guests, but for me too. So many voices out there that maybe
everybody's getting lost in the oversaturated internet market. That's been a reality for a while, and it's not going away, and it's just getting worse. I've had this conversation with a lot of different guests that I've had on, and the strategy seems to be marketing, which is not anything new because that's been the success story for many, many companies. They might have a mediocre product, but if they had stellar marketing, it sells. But the thing is, trying to market this type of a show is a little bit difficult, and it's a little bit hard to find people that really know how to do it, which is one thing my producer and I have been sort of talking about. If we wanted to branch out, maybe we were going to start a PR company where we're actually going to PR other people's shows, but we'd get paid for it. So it would be something to use and then piggyback it on our show or something like that. I don't know. We haven't hammered out all the details. I think
there'd be a market for that because a lot of people are just getting their feet in the door in the podcasting world.
Yeah.
And so they might, I'm sure there's people probably doing that at some level, but I can't imagine there's enough of them with all the people who are podcasting and
there's very
trying
few
to get into the podcasting world.
There's very few. I mean, there's tons of PR for authors and for music artists. And there are certain PR groups and companies that do film for indie filmmakers. But for podcasts and for video casts, good luck. Good luck trying to find, because I've looked.
I wonder how they put their names out there.
You know, and the couple that I did get were disasters. So I'm very hesitant to go back into the PR world again because... well, I don't want to get into that, but the two that I hired for a short time were complete disasters. So, you know, it's to the point where, well, if they can't do it right, I have to do it myself. And we'll see where that goes. We do have to wrap this up, Sheri. Unfortunately, we have run out of time.
Okay.
My guest is Sheri Fernandez, and your book is called Life Mastery, Personal Progression Toward an Infinite Potential. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yes. Yes, of course, you can get the book on Amazon, Life Mastery, by Sheri Fernandez. It's available on Amazon. I'm working on the audiobook right now, so the audiobook will be out about another month. But you can buy the book in hardback, paperback, or ebook. And then on the website is lifemasteryinfo.com. There's a lot of downloads and tracking sheets and different things on the website. So
give that out again.
Lifemasteryinfo.
There we go.
Lifemasteryinfo.com.
Okay, super. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. This was a nice conversation.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you for having me.
Best of luck. I hope it all goes well.
Okay, you too.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Hi, this is John Morgan, production supervisor for DJC Productions. You're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, please welcome back to the Douglas Coleman Show, Bob Brill. Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. How about you?
Doing fine, thank you. I looked it up. You were on the show back in April, and I don't remember the book that you were promoting then.
Oh, it was probably my Western.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, I wrote a Western series. It still wasn't finished yet. I think it was probably book 6 out of what will be 10. So we've set that aside a little bit for right now to move on with this one.
How do you decide how many books are going to be in a series?
Well, I chose 10 because I felt it was a real good, solid number that at some point after the 10 were done, somebody wanted to buy a compilation of all the books. 10 was an easy number to remember. And it also, since my character in that series takes place over a period of basically about 3 years, I felt 10 would be a good number for him to go to as far as places where he solves his crimes and things like that, so that I wouldn't kind of burn him out. You know, I didn't want to overdo it. You know, you start looking for stuff to do, and I didn't want to do that. I just felt 10 was just a perfect number.
Well, how do you know that you're going to have enough material to get 10 books out of it? I guess that's what I'm asking about.
Well, it's fiction. So like a good friend of mine once said, you can just make stuff up.
Well, all right. I guess that's a good answer as any. You have to plan out the whole story in your head first, though, right? And then kind of chop it up and say, okay, yeah, I think I can get 10 books out of this.
Yeah, basically, because each of the Lancer books, Lancer Hero of the West is what we're talking about here. Each one of those, it's not so much a series, although it can be taken that way. In other words, book to book, where you don't, but you can pick up any of the books at any time and read them individually. You don't have to read them in order or anything like that. And the nice thing about Lancer is if you do read them in order, you find out a little bit more about this mysterious character all the way through. Now, I've got the next book in my head planned, and I also have number 10 planned. I know how this thing is going to end. It's those 2 books in between that I haven't picked yet. And usually I pick a city in the West that he is going to go to perform that episode. The first one was Prescott, Arizona. The second one was Los Angeles, and so on and so forth. And each one's a different affair. So it's like Lancer Hero of the West, the Prescott affair. Lancer Hero of the West, the Broken Bow affair. And so I will write the story based on something in that region that is particular to that region. And that's where I kind of develop the whole story from there. Like the next one's going to be Virginia City. We all know quite a bit about Virginia City and the West during the early 1880s. So there's a lot to choose from. But the story's already in my head, outlined and ready to go to write. But it's a matter of just finding the time to write that one because, the Tattoo Murder is the book that we have coming out this month, and looking forward to that being, the next phase in my writing career.
Okay, so that's the new book that you're promoting now. Is called The Tattoo Murder.
Right.
Tell us a little about this story.
Well, The Tattoo Murder it's a work of fiction. It's basically based in Ventura, California, which is a coastal community between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles. And he's a local cop. He's a detective. His name is John Potenza. And he solves crimes sort of the old-fashioned way. He's this really hunk of a guy, He has his women. He has a lot of women. He has his steady woman, but he has other women as well. And that will be kind of controversial. But he's a ladies' man. I guess you'd say he's sort of a local James Bond when it comes to his ladies. But The Tattoo Murder is all about solving a crime. A body, the very first page, a body washes up on shore, and Potenza has to solve that crime while at the same time keeping 2 rival motorcycle gangs from warring, from going to mattress, so to speak. And it's based on, I lived in Ventura for a while. It's a lot of Ventura. And we got 2 really unique things about this particular book. Number one, I want it to be read, I wrote it to be read as if it really happened, as if, matter of fact, one of the things that's in the book is a time check. Every scene, there's a headline, so to speak, where it tells where you're at, or where John Potenza is at, where the scene is at, what day of the week it is, the date, and then what time of day. Which, is sort of, okay, it leads you to believe that it's actually happening. And the other thing is, we have actual photographs of places where much of the book takes place. In other words, where a body's found. We have a picture of a field in Ventura where it's perfect where that body might be found. Or we have pictures of downtown Ventura or things like that, or, where the body washed up. So we have actual photos that we took just recently to put in the book, and they're in the photo section. So if you picked up this book, not realizing it's fiction, you would think it's a real life story. But we automatically put somewhere in the first couple of pages, this is a work of fiction. The photographs are of real places in real time.
So it's a real fiction, but it's also sort of set up like a documentary.
I don't know, you'd say documentary, because it actually is a narrative. it's there's conversation, and so it's like you'd pick up a John Jakes book, or any other novelist who's writing fiction about crime. There would be that type of book, but at the same time, it is made to be like it's happening for real.
Oh, happening in real time.
For real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it happens in 2012. That's the date I picked. So, which means anything I refer to in the guy's past, I have to really be very, very careful, because to make him, certain age, the age that he is.
So is this character, and also your Lancer character, are they people that you knew, that you've kind of, twisted around a bit?
Well, yes and no. And the Lancer character, Lancer was taken from a compilation of 1950s TV Westerns and early 1960s TV Westerns. I grew up watching Westerns with my father, and it's one of the best things I remember about my early life. And so I combined several of those TV characters and then added my own as well. My particular addition is the fact that he carries Turkish Delight in his saddlebags, which is one of my favorite foods or treats, so to speak. In the John Potenza character, there are characters in the book who are based on people that I knew, and including one who's in one of the photographs, who is a very dear friend of mine, who gets to be the snitch, so to speak, and the godfather of the avenue, so to speak, that John Potenza uses to help him find out what's going on the underbelly of Ventura. And he did it willingly, and we have a picture of him. We don't show his face, but he's sitting in his restaurant. And so, there are people that from my real life that I drew from. John Potenza is more of a made-up character. I don't think I know of anybody who is John Potenza. His name is taken from my ancestral home. I'm Italian American, and my grandfather and my grandmother came from the city of Potenza, which in Italian means power. So up in the mountains between Bari and Naples, which I've been there many times, and so that's where I pulled the name from, because I wanted to honor my family name.
Oh, well, that's sort of like Corleone, yeah.
Yeah, in the same sense. Yes, it is. Yeah, but he came from Corleone, which is basically, our family name was Briuolo, and it's the old Italian, Briuolo. My name is Brill, because I was born generations later after the name was changed. But I wanted to, like I said, pull the name Potenza. And I've had several people in promoting the book mention that, including a guy named John Potenza.
Well, a lot of times names got changed at Ellis Island because the customs and immigration officer couldn't pronounce it.
Exactly.
So they just chopped it and shortened it, and I mean that's what happened to Vito, right? They just made him Vito Corleone.
Yeah. The old joke was there was an Irish immigration officer who couldn't pronounce the Italian name, and he chopped it in half. So there you go. No offense to the Irish, because I married an Irish girl. So
this book, is this going to be a series as well, or is this just a one-off?
It could be. I've left it in the end where he is given another assignment. And the second book is in my head. If this book does well enough, there will be a second. And the second book, it will be based on a book I started to write years ago. And it would be based on an actual case that I covered in Fresno County when I was a reporter up there. And so, yeah, that would be that. The names will be changed and certain other things, and it'll be fictionalized, but the story will be basically the same. And I've even got a title for that one. But I want to see what this book does, because this particular book, I actually wrote this book almost 10 years ago, and I have held off publishing it. Several people have read it who I trust, and over the years, and they've been pushing me to publish it. Personally, after rereading it and doing a little bit of rewriting, I think it's the best thing I've ever written. as far as books are concerned. It's very detailed. It's a story that keeps you hungry for more. And the nice thing about this, I'm a person who, if I sit down to read a book, it'll take me months because I'll read it when I have the time. And if you're that type of person, this is perfect because the chapters are not so short, but the parts of the chapters when the scene changes where you have a break are. So like I'm looking at a page in front of me where the scene ends and the next break says home of Mary Latour, Friday night, April 14th, 2012, 11 p.m. Well, you can stop there and know exactly, and when you pick the book up a couple of weeks later or whatever, you'll know exactly where you are in the story, which for people like me who, can't sit down and read a book in one night, it's a great help. My publisher, when he picked it up and read it, he said he couldn't put it down, which that's made me happy.
Oh, well, sure. Well, that sounds like you have sort of built-in bookmarkers, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And the fact that it does have a handoff to another book, should I choose to write one, I left that in as well. And so if people like the book and they buy it and it does well enough, then I will go ahead and write the second book. But like I said, it's a very it is complicated in the fact that it takes a lot of twists and turns that all come together. But there's several different storylines along a central theme. All
right, Bob. Well, we got to wrap this up. Do you have a website you want to give out?
Yeah, my particular website, they can either go to Amazon, the normal place. You can always Google Bob Brill, and I come up like 17 of the top 20. But my particular website is bobbrillbooks.com, which is extremely easy to remember, bobbrillbooks.com. And they can follow me, or they can just go to bobbrill.com and find out all the stuff that I do, which has links to everything else, my podcasts, my books, my columns, anything else that I write. It's all there under Bob Brill. Just remember, I'm not Bob Brill, the IP attorney in Chicago. I'm certainly not Bob Brill, the bodybuilder whose pictures are all over the internet. I'm not Bob Brill, the drummer for Berlin, and I'm not Bob Brill, who is the scene design Tony-winning scene designer in Hollywood. But I'm the Bob Brill, the journalist.
I didn't know there were that many Bob Brills out there.
I didn't either until I started doing this.
Wow. That's amazing. All right, Bob. Well, thanks for coming on. Nice talking to you again.
Thank you.
And best of luck with the new